In the early 1980s, a French sports car quietly hit the roads, one that most people have probably never heard of. Meet the Matra Murena, a curious little car with an unusual three-seat setup and a reputation for fighting rust better than any superhero could. Matra, a French engineering company based in Romorantin-Lanthenay, was known for making quirky vehicles. Before the Murena, they had the Matra Simca Baghira, famous for two things, having 3 front seats and being prone to rust. So, Matra decided they would fix the rust issue once and for all. Enter Antonis Valanis, the Greek designer tasked with crafting a rust-resistant successor. He created a sleek, aerodynamic car with a drag coefficient of 0.328. Pretty good for 1980. The Murena wasn't just pretty. Its frame was made entirely from galvanized steel, dipped completely in molten zinc. Rust had finally met its match. Its body, made from fiberglass composite, was so lightweight it could practically be carried by 2 strong people, maybe 3 if they're feeling lazy. The Murena continued the Baghira's unusual tradition, 3 front seats side by side. Forget about backseat drivers, everyone gets a front row seat. This odd seating arrangement was actually practical, making it easier to squeeze in that extra friend who never chipped in for gas. Under the hood, or rather behind the seats, the Murena featured 2 engine options. The entry-level model had a 1.6-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 92 horsepower. It wasn't a rocket, but it could reach 100 kilometers per hour in about 11.8 seconds, topping out at 182 kilometers per hour. For speed enthusiasts who wanted a bit more power, there was a 2.2-liter model producing 118 horsepower. It went from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 9.3 seconds, reaching nearly 200 kilometers per hour. But for those who felt the need for even more speed, Matra introduced the Murena S in 1983. With a special upgrade package named Preparation 142, it boosted power up to 142 horsepower. The Murena S could sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in a respectable 8.4 seconds and hit a top speed of 210 kilometers per hour. Not bad for a car with 3 front seats. Handling was a priority. The Murena used double wishbone suspension up front with torsion bars and trailing arms at the rear with coil springs. This combination made it agile and comfortable, giving drivers confidence to tackle twisty roads without spilling their coffee. Matra built just 10,680 Murenas from 1980 until production stopped in 1983. The breakdown included 5,640 units of the 1.6-liter model, 4,560 units of the 2.2-liter version, and only 480 of the high-performance Murena S models. Matra halted Murena production to start building something entirely different, the Renault Espace, one of Europe's first minivans. Yes, Matra swapped sporty coupes for spacious family movers. Quite a career change. Today, the Murena remains a fascinating, if slightly obscure, piece of automotive history. A car that defied rust, offered room for one more friend, and vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Not bad for a quirky French car from the 1980s. In the world of sports cars, some names come easily to mind like Ferrari, Porsche, or Aston Martin, but today we explore a car that wanted to challenge them all, but you probably never heard of it. Welcome to the unusual story of the French-made MVS Venturi Atlantique. Back in 1989, a small French car maker named Venturi introduced the Coupe 260. It had a 2.8-liter turbocharged V6 engine, known as the PRV engine because it was made by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. This engine could produce 260 horsepower, enough to make things exciting, but not enough to scare your grandma. But Venturi thought they could do better. In 1991, Venturi upgraded the Coupe 260 into the Atlantique 260. The car kept the same engine but lost some weight, going down to about 2,447 pounds. This helped it speed from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 5.2 seconds and reach a top speed of 270 kilometers per hour. It was fast, but sales were slow. Then, in 1994, Venturi got a new owner, a Scottish businessman named Hubert O'Neill. Hubert wanted Venturi to stand tall next to the giants. At the Paris Motor Show, Venturi introduced a new car called the Atlantique 300. It had a bigger engine, a 3.0-liter V6, available with or without a turbocharger. The turbocharged version made 281 horsepower and could hit 280 kilometers per hour. It seemed like Venturi was finally getting noticed. But Venturi didn't stop there. In 1998, they introduced their best version yet, the Atlantique 300 Biturbo. With its twin turbocharged V6 engine, this car pumped out 310 horsepower and 394 newton meters of torque. It was able to sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 4.7 seconds, making it fast enough to impress anyone who liked speed. Yet strangely, its top speed was slightly lower, at 275 kilometers per hour. The Venturi Atlantique looked great, with a fiberglass body and sleek curves. It measured 4,242 millimeters long, 1,840 millimeters wide, and just 1,180 millimeters high, with a wheelbase of 2,500 millimeters. Despite its stylish appearance and strong performance, the car didn't sell well. Over its entire production life, Venturi sold fewer than 700 cars in total. That's fewer cars than you'd see in a busy supermarket parking lot. In 1992, British TV show Top Gear's Jeremy Clarkson tested the Venturi Atlantique and compared it to having a personal jet fighter, saying he loved it. But loving a car on TV doesn't mean people will buy it in real life. Venturi soon faced serious financial trouble, eventually declaring bankruptcy in 2000, ending the Atlantique's story forever. Today, the Venturi Atlantique is a rare car that's remembered mostly by car enthusiasts and collectors. It might have been forgotten by most people, overshadowed by bigger brands, but it still tells a fascinating story. It's the story of big dreams from a small French company trying hard to compete with the world's best, even though not many people noticed. In the late 1970s, a quirky sports car quietly appeared in England that many people today have probably never heard of, the AC3000 ME. This odd little vehicle wasn't exactly famous or hugely successful, but it has a story full of twists, turns, and even some drama. It all began when two engineers named Peter Bahana and Robin Stables, who previously worked at the racing car company Lola, created a car prototype called the Diablo. This car was shown at the 1972 London Racing Car Show. It used a humble engine from an Austin Maxi, not exactly racing material. But somehow, the car caught the eye of AC Cars, a company already known for the iconic AC Cobra. AC saw potential and bought the Diablo design to create their next big thing. At the 1973 London Motor Show, AC officially showed off their new version called the AC3000 ME. It took 6 long years before the car finally went into production in 1979. The delays were mainly caused by new safety regulations that slowed down the approval process. Initially, AC hoped to sell the car cheaply, around 3,000 to 4,000 British pounds. But by the time the car was ready, the price had ballooned to over 11,000 pounds. As you might guess, not many people lined up to buy one. Underneath its fiberglass body, the AC3000 ME had a steel frame with a built-in roll bar, safe, but not exactly sleek. It was small, measuring about 3,988 millimeters in length, 1,651 millimeters wide, and only 1,143 millimeters tall, riding on a short 2,300 millimeter wheelbase. Weighing around 2,392 pounds, the car had a mid-mounted Ford Essex V6 engine, producing just 138 horsepower and 260 newton meters of torque. Not a powerhouse by sports car standards. With this engine, the car topped out around 193 kilometers per hour, meaning it wouldn't exactly scare a Ferrari. The 3000 ME featured a unique transmission designed by AC with gears from a company named Hewland, complete with a fancy Ferrari-like gated shifter. Suspension was simple yet effective, with double wishbones and coil springs all around. Stopping power came from standard Girling brakes, and the car rolled on Wolf Race alloy wheels fitted with Pirelli tires. Despite high hopes, only 106 AC 3000 MEs were ever built, 76 in Thames Ditton, England, and 30 more in Hillington, Scotland. The car did spawn a few odd prototypes, though. Ghia, an Italian design firm, even created a version called the AC Ghia, which appeared at the 1981 Geneva Motor Show. It never reached production. Another attempt came from Scotland as the Ecosse signature, featuring a turbocharged Fiat engine restyled by Peter Stevens, but only one car was ever built due to money troubles. Perhaps the weirdest twist was the Lincoln Quicksilver, a strange four-door sedan created in 1983 using the 3000 ME chassis. Thankfully or sadly, depending on your taste, it also stayed just a prototype. Today, the AC3000 ME is remembered mostly by collectors and car enthusiasts for its unusual story rather than performance or fame. It's a bit like that kid at school who tried really hard to be cool but never quite made it, and honestly, that's part of its charm. In the world of cars, some become legends and others, well, they become stories worth telling for different reasons. Today, we dive into one of those cars that started with big dreams but ended with mixed results, the Lancia Monte Carlo. The Lancia Monte Carlo, first launched in 1975, was an Italian sports car made by the famous automaker Lancia. But here's a twist. It wasn't fully a Lancia creation. It was actually designed and built entirely by a company named Pininfarina at their factory in Turin, Italy. Yes, the same Pininfarina, known for designing cars so beautiful they make you forget practicality exists. But let's step back a bit. The Monte Carlo started as something else, a project by Fiat to make a faster and stronger version of their little sports car, the Fiat X1/9. Eventually, Fiat changed its mind and the project found its way to Lancia, turning into the Beta Monte Carlo. During this transformation, even a famous Formula One driver, Riccardo Patrese, helped test and fine-tune the car, which sounds cool until you realize it still didn't guarantee perfection. The Monte Carlo had two main series. Series 1, from 1975 to 1978, came with unique 13-inch wheels known as bow-tie wheels and had styling similar to other Lancia Beta cars. This version came as both a coupe and a spider, the spider being a fancy term for a car whose roof comes off, kind of. You see, the Monte Carlo Spider had a targa top made from fabric that rolled up and hid cleverly behind the seats, showing off some quirky Italian engineering. Then came Series 2 from 1980 to 1981, dropping the Beta from its name and gaining 14-inch wheels, a modern front grille, and even optional air conditioning. A luxury at that time, especially in an Italian car where even basic reliability was often optional. There was also an American cousin, the Lancia Scorpion. But don't get too excited. Due to strict US emission laws, it came with a weaker 1.8-liter engine, huge bumpers, and odd headlights that looked like someone surprised the car with bad news. Underneath its stylish skin, the Monte Carlo had a 2.0-liter engine with 120 horsepower, managing 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in about 8.9 seconds. Its top speed reached about 190 kilometers per hour, pretty decent for its day. The Monte Carlo was relatively light, weighing between 2028 to 2314 pounds, depending on how many luxuries, or more honestly, how many repairs, it carried. In racing, the Monte Carlo finally got to shine, especially as the Monte Carlo Turbo. With a tiny 1.4-liter turbocharged engine producing up to 473 horsepower, it helped Lancia win important championships in 1980 and 1981. And later, a modified Monte Carlo called the Lancia Rally 037 won the World Rally Championship in 1983, making history as the last rear-wheel drive car to do so before everyone else started using four-wheel drive. Today, the Lancia Monte Carlo is remembered as much for its racing success as for its quirky personality and charming Italian flaws. It's a classic tale of ambition, style, and the reality check of practicality. Perfectly imperfect and wonderfully memorable. The De Tomaso Guara. Imagine building a powerful sports car and then nearly forgetting to add space for your bags. Yes, that's the De Tomaso Guara. But don't judge too quickly, there's more to this tale. The De Tomaso Guara first appeared at the Geneva Motor Show in Switzerland back in 1993. The car came to life thanks to Alejandro de Tomaso, the founder of the De Tomaso Car Company. Alejandro loved fast cars, so naturally he wanted the Guara to stand out. But interestingly, the design didn't actually start as a De Tomaso car. Instead, it began as something called the Maserati Barchetta Stradale prototype, made in 1991. When Fiat bought Maserati, they didn't continue making the Barchetta. Alejandro didn't want the idea to go to waste, so he created the Guara, keeping most of the original look designed by Carlo from Synthesis Design. One unusual thing about the Guara is what it's made of: fiberglass and Kevlar. Kevlar is the stuff used in bulletproof jackets, which sounds very safe, until you realize the car didn't come with space for your luggage. The area that normally would hold your bags instead had racing-style suspension parts borrowed from Formula One and IndyCar racing cars. It had independent upper and lower wishbones with pushrod-operated front and rear suspension, which means driving was excellent, but carrying your groceries was impossible. At least the wheels made by Marchesini look cool enough to distract from the missing trunk. When it first launched, the Guara used a strong BMW engine called the M60B40. It was a 4.0-liter engine producing between 286 horsepower and 304 horsepower. The gearbox was made by Getrag and had 6 speeds, letting the car go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just about 5 seconds, reaching a top speed of around 270 kilometers per hour. But by 1998, BMW stopped making this engine, forcing Alejandro to switch to a 4.6-liter Ford Modular Vibe 8, giving the car about 305 horsepower. The Guara was not just one type of car. It had 3 models. The first and most common was the Coupe with a fixed roof. The second, called the Barchetta, had no proper windshield, meaning drivers had to wear helmets just to keep bugs out of their teeth. Practical, right? Only 10 of these were made. The third was the Spider, a roadster version with a folding soft top and windshield, which seemed like luxury compared to the helmet-only version. Only 4 Spiders left the factory. Sadly, the story of the Guara didn't have a fairy tale ending. Production stopped in 2004 because De Tomaso ran out of money and went into liquidation. Interestingly, one car ordered in 2004 by an Austrian customer didn't get delivered until 2011, 7 years later. Talk about patience. So that's the De Tomaso Guara. Fast, strange, a bit impractical, but definitely unforgettable. It's the kind of car story that makes you laugh a little and wonder a lot.